let's begin. So as you can see behind me, we're going to touch back on graduated bobs, graduation, two forms of graduation that I personally use all of the time for my clients. I find that wherever you are in the head, your graduation techniques can change slightly, or they should possibly change slightly, or you can keep yourself with one technique, completely up to you. What we're going to look at doing today is sort of giving you that the tools in your box to be able to create something that you find beautiful. Okay. I am always very heavy on the fact of hairdressing is in the eye of the beholder. Is what you think is beautiful is in your mindset. What I think is beautiful, you may think is a very ugly haircut, but what I find I don't really like, you guys might love it. So when you're working with us here, we want to basically give you, especially when you get onto your level 3 and more level 3 focused work, you want to get to more of a stage where you're finding your own perspectives and finding what you like about hair and what you love about hair, and actually what you think is going to be the best thing for you to do. So we're going to focus on two forms of graduation. As I said, we're going to focus on flat graduation and we're going to focus on triangular graduation. Okay, shape work, don't worry too much. Don't focus solely on what I'm talking about is in triangular, square, round. You're going to get onto this later in the videos that we do, basically, but you're also going to find that if you go too heavy too fast, as we're saying in the chat just there, where I was asking about which layering techniques you'd like to see later, most of us want to, I think most of us want to stay quite classic, which is good, and quite simple and quite basic, which is great. Get the basics, then push those forwards. But these are the basics. So we're going to show you what they are, what you can do with them, why you would use them, when you wouldn't use them, and also what they're going to do for you and what they're going to give you as a sense of a look for your guests. I'm very heavy on suitability, and later on in the 2 o'clock demo, I'm going to talk suitability constantly. It's going to be something that I feel very, very strongly about and very, very heavily about. And there's a big reason why I feel strongly about it. And I'll tell you that in a little bit of time. I'm very open. I don't mind saying what I've failed on in the past or what I've passed on in the past. I think it's important for people to know. So we watched Darren yesterday, and Darren did a very, very strong graduated bob technique. His was all through elevation, and that is the same as mine, similar to mine. But as I suggested, you can cut hair differently. There's all different ways to cut hair and different ways to formulate shape and technique. But primarily the overall thing is to follow the fundamentals that Darren explained so well yesterday. It was such a crucial demo for the stage in your guys' careers. I personally focus solely on my elevation chart and my over direction, so my distribution of hair. Anything away from 0 degrees of elevation. So elevation is lifting. So where you lift the hair up, you're elevating the hair. So anything at 0 degrees, okay, is going to form your lines or your one lengths. And then as soon as you lift the hair off of 0 degrees, you're going to start to change the weight in the hair. Okay, so the higher you lift the hair, the lighter the hair is going to become, because the less amount of this hair is sitting on your overall outline. Okay, so if we draw this down on here, you may find it a little bit easier. So here's my person's head. Hopefully you can see what I'm drawing here. And we have our outlines, okay, which are in here. So you have one outline. You have your first piece of hair around your hairline is your outlines, okay? Everything else leading up the head is getting longer and longer and longer to come down to hit that one line or that one length, okay? So the hair is getting longer and longer and longer to come down to hit that same point, okay? So what in a sense that shows, hopefully you can see that. I think you can see that. What in a sense that shows is that as you go up the head, all of the hair up here is sitting on that same line. Okay, so that's what's creating the weight. That's what we call weight. All right, so everything falling on one point is very heavy. Okay, so how do we take that weight out? We use elevation. And what elevation creates for us is, if we can see in this mannequin here again, if we lift the hair up to here and we cut that hair there, for instance, that hair is going to fall to here. So there's less hair falling down onto that one line. Okay, so in a sense, what we do is we take off that slight corner there. So it changes the weight because there's less weight falling down onto the overall outlines. I hope that makes sense. So when we talk about layering and graduation, graduation is in here. Okay, so anything from 0 degrees to 89 degrees of elevation, because what you're finding is the hair is still longer internally than it is externally. So graduation is a buildup of weight where your external line or your outline is the shortest point and everything internally gets longer. So your shortest point's your outline and everything will get longer as it comes down to hit that point and stack on top of each other. So you see with your graduated bob, somebody put a fantastic graduated bob in the group chat, and you could see the stack that they had on that shape. Okay, whereas layering is concerned, layering is anything from 90 degrees and up. Okay, and layering is a removal of weight where your external line is the longest point and everything internally gets shorter. So what we'll do here is show again. When we're doing our layering later, this will become more clear and more focused. But there's our outline, our shortest point here, because that's the outline that we wanted to create. And then I'm taking everything in here shorter. Okay. And then say when we do our uniform layer, when we run that line round, if we cut that into here, so here's our length, when we drop it, it falls higher than it would do sitting on the outline. Does that make sense? Hopefully that makes sense. If it doesn't make sense, let me know and we can try and explain it a little bit more. So layering is a removal of weight. With graduation, what we look to do is just stack hair on top of each other to create that base head shape in the back. Okay, so that's what we're going to do today. And the difference between flat graduation and round and triangular graduation, or flat graduation, is going to give you just a slight tuck. So as we see here on my mannequin, I'm going to do 1/2 flat, 1/2 triangular to show you guys the difference. So I've already put my line in. Okay, it's a little bit untidy in places, but I haven't refined that through just yet. Once you blow dry, you refine your work, and to be honest, I don't know anybody who's ever got a bob perfect when it's been wet. So say, for instance, we've got a guest in salon. She's got quite thick hair and she's quite thick hair, no influencing factors. She's got no real heavy growth patterns or anything like that. So a nape roll would have stopped us going so high. We'd have had to leave the length a lot longer. Double crown won't really impact this too much, and nothing in the front's going to impact us. Her hair is medium density, and we want to create a slight piece of graduation. She's got quite weighty hair, doesn't give her much volume. We want to create something where we give this area in here of the line. See how that sort of pops out here, all on that one line, and it sticks out as quite a little bit of a chunk. All we're looking to do, or all she wants us to do, is just tuck that in slightly to give her a much more sort of head-hugging overall image to the look. So she just wants to give that a little bit of a bink in there. Nothing too drastic. She likes the bobby look, the one-length bobby look. But we know as professional hairstylists that if we just leave it as a bob, for instance, we could be in a little bit of trouble in the next couple of weeks. We could find that there's going to be a little bit of an issue when she starts to grow the hair down. This could get a little bit too bulky. Okay, that's on the left. And on the right-hand side, we've got a guest who has the same density hair, and we want to do something slightly different. Maybe she's a little bit more quirky, possibly. Maybe she's a little bit more, I don't know, she does a little bit more with her hair. She wants to have a little bit more height. Maybe she's not got as thick a hair, so we want to build a bit more shape in the hair. Her hair's quite a little bit less dense, shall we say, a little bit less thickness to it. So we want to create something where it's got a much higher sort of head-hugging appeal to the hair. Give her that head shape back. Maybe her back of her head's quite flat, and we want to create that image and that silhouette of some height and some absolute roundness to the hair. Okay, so that's what we're going to do today. So I'm going to push her head forwards, and I'm going to section myself away from my crown area and run that into the top of the ear on both sides. How are you guys finding your graduated bobs? I know you went through some graduation, I think it was last week with Michelle, wasn't it? If I'm correct. Am I correct? I think some of you went through graduation.
Yeah, we did it on Thursday. I found it quite hard. I found holding my fingers at the right angle was where I struggled the most.
Okay. Perfect. To be honest, that's one of the biggest struggles that I found when I was working, is understanding the angles and actually understanding where to put my fingers. And so good. I'm almost quite glad you found that, because I've got quite an easy way to solve that. Anyone else find it quite difficult or quite easy? Actually, it's quite a nice way to go as well. Anyone find it very easy? For me, it's quite easy. Yeah, good, perfect. You're going to find that in hair, you're going to find things you love and things you don't. You're going to find things you find easy and things you think, oh, just don't ever want to do that again. For me, line work is the worst. Keeping everything onto that one line, I just find it so tough. Every time when I was training, I just could not get it right. It was so difficult. And I find now I have a technique to basically correct it so I can find it easier, which I'm going to run through with you guys in a couple of weeks, by the way. I'm going to give you a bit of my technique for doing line work and keeping your balance. But there's times when you're going to find things very difficult. And the only way to get around those difficult times is just to practice, okay? And I have techniques that I personally use that I find really, really easy, which I'm going to share with you guys. But you've just got to practice yourselves. You've got to make sure you're working all the time. So we're going to start on the left-hand side, which is going to be flat graduation. Now, flat graduation is just to aid that slight tuck. So if we're thinking down here with our build-up of weight that we've been drawing, hopefully you guys can still see that. All we're looking to do is take off that ever so slight front corner of the look to tuck the hair in, okay? It's a very, very soft form of graduation. This is a very easy graduation to try and put into your guest's hair, even without them knowing. If they've got very thick hair and they want that slight bevel, that natural bevel, you are not going to get that with just a line work or a one-length haircut. You have to put something in there. So if you're going to layer it down, you'll take too much weight out, she'll notice it more. If you just do some flat graduation, it's just going to tuck the hair in. Okay, my sectioning pattern is going to be very simply the same as we were working with our one lengths, okay? But the difference is we're going to start to work with elevation, okay? So we want to basically create that little bit more of a weightless flow to the haircut. So everything's still going to be pulled down to the same point. So my overall line is going to fall here, and my overall line is going to fall all the way through internally into the front. Because I'm not changing my outline anymore, we're only working internally. So then everything's going to fall down into this point here with our elevation. But what we're going to find is every single time we come through up another section, I think hopefully you can see this.
Rob, sorry, we don't really see with the lights on your family. Just
yeah, I didn't think you would.
I'm sorry for that.
Go on, let me swing you forwards and maybe that will... There's a light right above my head, so I do apologise. Is that better?
Yeah, like that. Yeah.
Little bit.
Exactly.
So try and block out the light. I'll take a photo of it and and I'll send it. But each section, if you can see, each section, we're going to be lifting the hair or elevating the hair a little bit higher each time as we go up. Okay? So if I try and block that out, it's not working. But each section we're going to elevate, basically. So I'm going to show you that now. So if I shift this back, I'm using magic paper and it's very, very shiny, which is not good. So left-hand side first of all, my section down the back, okay? And make sure that's straight. First of all, that'll be good, wouldn't it? And we're going to start working on the left. So head is forwards, and I'm going to take slightly rounded sections, probably about two, probably a bit low, probably about 2 sections up from the bottom, okay? And here, I'm just going to start by taking off my first corner. So you can see my corner in there. If I come this side, you possibly be able to see it a little bit more, even though my hand's going to be in the way there, isn't it? It's quite intricate, this stuff. So I would stand directly in the back, and we're going to pull the hair away. So I'm going to lift the hair up, still working parallel to my overall section. And there's my first piece. Okay, so my first bit of elevation is coming, first bit of elevation was on the 0 degrees. And then each time I'm going to be lifting a little bit higher. Okay, so first section, I'm just going to take that tiny piece of hair off. And if I come a little bit closer and move my arm out of the way when we're holding, in here, we can see that I'm just taking that slight corner off of the back of this box fob. Okay, so when we drop it, it doesn't really look like anything's changed because I've taken such a tiny piece off. But as we move up the head, you're going to find that you get an awful lot more. Somebody's calling me. Let me hang up. I don't know how they called me through Zoom. Hello, carry on. So next section is going to be a little bit softer. Okay, so very tiny sections as we're coming up the head. Really, really, really important that we take our time. If we take massive, great sections, then our elevation is going to change internally from the look. So very important that we don't go too crazy and don't go too far straight away. So again, section number 2, we're going to elevate just a little bit higher. And you can start to see the amount more hair that's coming off. Because the hair's getting longer, as we explained earlier on, the hair's getting longer as we're coming up to reach down to that point. So it only makes sense that the higher up we go, the more hair that we're going to be taking off. Hopefully that makes sense. If it doesn't, again, please do let me know. But we're just working this flat. Everything is horizontal and we're still creating our graduation because we're elevating, but we're just lifting our slight corner off of the overall internal look that's coming up, okay, or as we come up the head. So next section, very small again. And really important here that we still keep ourselves following the shape of our section. So my section is coming slightly angled. So my fingers are going to be slightly angled. I'm not coming directly horizontal. Okay, I still want that slight tuck into the sides. If we go horizontal the whole way, we're going to start coming into the hair in the sides, which is going to make it a little bit more difficult to control. So here again, I'm going to go this way actually, so that we can show my elevation a little bit better. So head stays in the same place, and I'm going to lift. Hopefully my fingers aren't in the way. They're going to be in the way there. The joys of working on Zoom. If I show you this way, you'll see. So my elevation stays nice and a little bit higher, and we're starting to take more hair as we come through the look. Okay, so spin that around again. Sorry about this. So make sure that's all out the way. And we're going to elevate again, ever so slightly, and pick up my guide and run through.
Rob,
Yep.
I don't understand whether you're cutting diagonally, because obviously they go longer on the outer corner.
Yep.
And how much are you taking off each time?
Yep, good question. So yes, just quickly, this is flat graduation, Pauline. We're cutting diagonally, slightly diagonally, because our sections are diagonal. Okay, so the sections are slightly diagonal, so they're not dead horizontal. We're cutting at this sort of diagonal plane, and every time when we start basically down here, we're taking off a tiny piece. Because the hair's not very long back there, we're right on the hairline basically. But as we come up, your guideline's going to show you how much more hair you're taking off. So if I pull her really close as we take our next piece, you'll hopefully be able to see a little bit clearer. So we can see the graduation forming. So the graduation's in here running in. But as you're asking there, we're slightly diagonal. Okay, so because our sections are slightly diagonal, our cutting line is going to be slightly diagonal. And when we lift, I don't know if you'll see it, hopefully you will. So we lift and we elevate, okay, and then we can see our guideline in there, and the guide is there, and it's telling us how much we're gonna basically take away. So each time as we're coming up the head, we're taking more because the line is flat, or every piece of hair is coming down to hit that one length at the moment. So what we want to do is just create that slight bevel to the look, or the slight curve to the look. So every time you're going to be taking more hair off until you reach the top. Does that answer your question? Or not really?
Yes.
It does?
I mean, it does help. It does help. Thank you so much.
Ish. It's quite difficult to really explain how much more you're taking off. All really I always say is start very small, and then it will just be, it will show you where you go. Your guideline will show you as you move in. So
thank you.
It's quite confusing, but when you work it, you'll see exactly what I mean. So as long as your elevation stays the same, so the elevation now, we're going to lift again. So excuse this side, we're working on the other side, so I don't know why I'm on that side. So elevation 0 degrees, and then we're just getting higher. Each section we're lifting higher, okay? So we're not staying at 0, we're not staying at 45, we're not going at 90. I'm not one who really talks about angles too much. I don't like the way people say it has to be 45 degrees. It doesn't. If you've got somebody with thick hair, lift it higher because you're going to take more weight out. If you've got someone with finer hair, run it lower because you're going to take less weight out. Okay, there's going to be more hair sitting down onto that one point. But primarily, what we want to do here is start low, and each small section we're taking is coming a little bit higher and a little bit higher because that's pushing weight up onto the top of the head. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. If it doesn't, then I will send this video in and we'll do it again, and I'll start to write. I'll write up a little blurb as well, which could be quite good. So if we analyze what's actually happening with our shape around here. So remember how we had, when we started, we had that slight blockiness, didn't we, in here? What's the benefit of doing this rather than the vertical sections? I'll explain now. So this is primarily going to give us a slight piece of graduation on the bottom. It's nothing too strenuous. It's nothing too high. We're going to do diagonal sections afterwards, which I'm going to show you the difference in the cuts. So just bear with me a little bit, okay? And then you'll see by the end what the difference is. So with horizontal, it's just giving us that slight little tuck in underneath. We're only going to have about a comb's width of graduation in here, tiny. Okay, it's just for somebody who wants to have that little bevel to their hair. Okay, so we can see that's just tucked in. When we're working our triangular sections or our vertical sections a little bit later, you'll see the difference, and you can get much higher with your graduation. So if you want something quite small, quite soft, use flat. If you want something a little bit higher, use your verticals. Okay. Which is basically an answer to your question, but I'm going to show you the difference later on, okay? Or in about 20 minutes, we'll probably get that done. because I personally think if you have two different forms of graduation that you can create, your work's going to be an awful lot better and a lot easier to create. So we're just going to run our line, run our shape up. We're now getting up to the high points or the high roundness of the head. So I'm going to choose that final piece of elevation that I want to create. So I don't want to go any higher than that myself. You can go higher if you want to. And I'm just going to work my knuckles in and start to tuck behind the ear. Okay. So it's only a tiny, tiny piece of graduation that we're creating. This is a very nice technique, as I say, for somebody who just wants to have a small amount of something in the back, a small amount of shaping in the back. So again, as we start to run through, keep ourselves nice and flat. And run forwards. And we're just going to work that all the way into the front. Or until we can reach, the hair won't reach back here, or the hair at the front won't reach back. But we're going to stand in the back again, so keep ourselves where we want to be. Keep our elevation at that final stage. And just run it in. Okay? So that's your flat graduation. It's a little bit confusing when you're seeing it for the first time. But I promise you, when you watch it back, you'll find it so much more easy. And then when you have a go as well, you've got to feel, I don't really learn when I watch, I learn when I do stuff. So you will get there. You'll get this. It'll make it so much easier when you watch it back and have a little go yourselves. It does find it a little bit more understandable, I find. So if we're assessing where we are, our flat graduation, we've got a little bit hanging out there from the next side. So our flat graduation just gives us that ever so slight tuck to the hair. Okay, so it's nothing drastic, is it? This is quite a nice look for somebody who's a little bit older, for instance, who's got very thick hair, who just wants to tuck that hair in and give that slight bevel. So if I mess that up a little bit, you can see just where the graduation falls. So it's very, very close to the overall outline. Okay, so what's the difference?
Rob?
Yes.
Oh, sorry, can I ask you a question? The way that sort of looks, it almost looks like you were almost creating a sort of a tucked in blow dry effect by using the flat graduation.
Yeah.
So it's sort of like that, like not a massive shape, but almost like
Absolutely.
it would be an easier blow dry. You're rolling it under, you're tucking it in, it's really soft, kind of creating that. Yeah. Okay, cool. Thank you.
That's a really good, Maria, actually. That's such a nice way of explaining it. So thank you. You've just helped me out. I'm going to use that now. Every time I show this, I'm going to use that myself. It's a cracking way of thinking about it, because when you blow dry with one of these, for instance, a flat brush, you want that natural bevel. That's what I'm talking about when I mean a natural bevel. It's just a natural tuck almost, so that the hair's not poker straight. So the way Maria's just explained it there is perfect. It's exactly what we're doing. It's just helping you into that shape without having to do a mental hard blow dry. So it's giving you that, it's not giving you much graduation, it's just helping the hair tuck in. So when you blow dry in 2 minutes and it's perfect. So yeah, that's exactly what it is. And it's a very, very good way of explaining it. So I'm going to steal that.
Take it.
Using that myself. But I will reference you every time I use it. So there's a girl I worked with who goes to the Camden Academy called Maria. She said a fantastic way of working. So it's a nice.
As long as you say my name right, Rob, Marina.
Oh, Marina. I'm going to rewind this video and just cut that out. Well done, Marina. Good work.
It's just a joke.
So yeah, Marina smashed it. So that's exactly what we're doing. We're primarily just giving it that natural tuck. Now we're gonna go into what Catherine was saying about what's the difference of doing this than the triangular way or the vertical way. So the vertical way, I personally don't use vertical sections. I use more diagonal sections, which I find is a little bit easier, and I'll explain those through. So we're going to run now into that shape, and you'll see the difference once we are finished, okay? So ignore the left-hand side, but if we were working it both sides, we'll have our occipital bone, and we'll have our section into the top of the ear or behind the ear, and that's going to create this slight diagonal line into the front, okay? And then if we move over to these head sheets again, because these ones aren't in the light, we're going to have our section from the center into the occipital bone and run that shape into here. Okay, then we're going to start in on the occipital bone and pivot this section. Okay, so if you work vertically, you're at risk of taking your corners out, which I find is the biggest control form that we have. So what I mean by your corners is when we've done our line sits in, these are your corners here. We want to keep control of those two pieces in the end. So we're going to pivot from the occipital bone. So we work ourselves diagonally forwards. And section number 1 is in the middle. Then we have 2, 3, and 4. And then 2, 3, and 4. As we go up around the pivot line, okay? So this is going to be 3 and 4. And what we want to do is pull the hair back to the previous section. So 2 to 1, 3 to 2, and 4 to 3. Slow me down if I'm going too fast, please. Okay, so what we're doing when we over direct, we're increasing length into hair. So we're pulling hair from section 1, section 2 comes to 1, 3 to 2, 4 to 3. So the hair at 4 is longer than section number 1. So you want to create length into the front of somebody's haircut, where you find people normally have their length really long in the front and coming shorter up into the base. The hair at the front, as we did with our 1 lengths, we pulled it back to section 1. So say this is section 4, we pull it back to section 1, we're going to increase this gradual effect of length. Okay, so section 2 in here will come to 1, so it's gradually longer. Section 3 to 1 and 4 to 1, we're getting very long into the front. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. And each time in our elevation, we're going to lift. And this is where people normally talk about 45 degrees, because 45 degrees is bang in the middle of 0 and 90. Okay, so you're not leaving loads of weight in, but you're not taking too much weight away. That's why people talk 45. But as I say, if you've got somebody with really thick hair, you can lift it up somewhere closer to 90 or 89. And if you've got someone with fine hair, you want to be a little bit lower. So maybe more of a flattish grad. Okay, so we're going to start with section number 2 because section 1's already been cut. And we're going to pivot from this point from our occipital bone. Okay, so there's my section in here. And I want to be directly behind the guest. And we're going to lift up. And this is where we're going to have much higher elevation. So on our flat graduation, my elevation was down here, yeah? But on our vertical or triangular graduation, my elevation's right up here. So this is going to give you a much higher lift and a much higher stability of the graduation in the back, okay? But when I'm pivoting, I want to make sure my knuckles are in the same position. So my fingertips are just moving up to match round into this final section. So we're starting in here, and then we're going to lift section 2, section 3, and section 4 comes to be parallel with that shape. Okay, that's how we keep our balance the whole way through. Now, don't get too confused with this. Don't try and overthink this. Maybe I'm over talking this a little bit, so I'm going to get going. So, section 2, our outline drops, and we run our line. Okay, then I'm going to pivot from my occipital bone again to find section number 3, and I'm going to keep my knuckles in the same place, but now my elevation is a lot higher. Okay, and feet stay the same, body stays in the same position. Section 4, look how much higher my elevation is. So the flat grab was down here. My elevation's forced me to go higher into here, okay? So section 4, I can pick up my guide and run that in. And then we want to pull this section of hair back into the shape. So what would happen if I moved my body? Anyone know what would happen if I moved my body and stepped around? Can anybody tell me why it's important to stay in the back? Anyone have any idea?
Because you won't get that over direction if you move around the side.
Absolutely, yeah. So you want to go over direct, so we want to create the length in the front, yeah? So if I step round the shape, I'm cutting all of this length off down here. So if we see where my section number 4, I was in here. Okay, so I'm going to drop the hair and wait for the color to change on the thing. There we go. It's changed again. So my section in here was nice and controlled, but if I just move my body and not my fingers into here, we can see the difference. So my fingers have stayed the same and the comb stayed the same, but all I'm doing is moving my shoulders. Okay, so we instantly see as soon as I move around, I start to take off that corner of hair. I can start to tuck that in, but I want to keep that shape. Okay, so it's so important to keep yourself nicely tucked and nicely tucked into the center of the back of the head. Now I'm just going to move up the head. So now it becomes very simple. That's the more difficult part of it, or the most difficult part. Now everything is coming up slightly diagonally into the front, all the way through into that front section. And each time, again, we're going to be elevating. Okay, so section number 5, we're going to elevate. 6, we elevate. 7, we elevate. And 8, we elevate. Doesn't matter if you go to like 12 sections or 3 sections. No, probably not 3. That's too little. But each time now we're over directing back to that first or section number 4. Okay, so what we're going to achieve here is our elevation's already higher than our flat graduation, but each time we lift, we're going to lift a little bit higher each time. So we're now bringing our weight up, and then we're removing that weight. We're lifting as high as we possibly can, just below that 90 degrees if somebody's got very thick hair, okay? Because you're going to get that really nice silhouette to the shape and that nice tuck, okay? So section 5, still slightly diagonal into the front, standing in the same place as we do for the whole haircut. And now my elevation is going to lift just a tiny bit each time we move up the head. Okay, so sections 5, and again, as we were talking about just a second ago, we want to still bring that shape back to control our overall outline. Section 6 comes to the top of the ear. Okay, so again, we want to lift our shape high and run the line into the front, so we're keeping control of that line. And now we want to come all the way through to the front. So we could just come with that section, we could come up and hit this section. Personally, I like to go all the way through. Just keeps that little bit more fluidity with the hair or the haircut, okay? So push all the way through and run your section in to the front. Make sure that's clipped up away. And then when we see that come down, so we're coming everything's parallel now. From section 4, we're parallel all the way up to the very front, okay? And each time we're pulling back to here and we're just elevating that little bit higher each time. Body stays in the same place. And if anything reaches back here, it reaches and we cut it. If it doesn't reach, then we don't bother, okay? So dress that in and let's watch the hair fall down and just see ultimately where we create the line. Are there any questions? Anyone not sure of what we're doing here? Or anyone quite sure and want to add a different way to do it? Or are we sort of getting there or sort of seeing what we're doing anyway? Then you've got to try and do it. So that's always the difficult part. No? Feel a bit lost. Yeah. You will do, if I'm honest. but just watch it back, have a go, and you'll be fine. The graduated bob is not something that's too easy to really do distance learning. It really needs to be in the salon doing it. So don't focus on it too much. Don't let it wind you up. But it's just showing you two different forms of graduation. So watch it back and you will understand it, I promise you. It's just a new technique and it's a new way of working your graduation, which is a little bit, I find it easier, but it's a little bit more difficult to get your head around. So don't try and understand it all in one go, because it won't work.
Rob, maybe I lost, I'm not sure about the first section, how you cut the first section, the section 1. Sorry, maybe I miss it.
Yep. So section 1 is just vertical.
It's just vertical, like,
Yes.
no, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, sorry. So section 1, where we were back here at our occipital, just in here. So section 1 would be a vertical section in there. Okay. So that begins in here. And then section 2 is diagonal from there. Section 3, section 4, and then section 5 is all just parallel. So all we're doing is from our occipital, section 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then everything up.
Okay, I get it. Thank
Yeah,
you.
good.
Yeah.
So that's in then. So what have we created? What's the difference? So I'm going to show you that now and show you why you would use slightly different techniques for your graduations. So if I dress both out, and then we will see. So as Marina was saying earlier, the left-hand side, just sprayed myself. The left-hand side is slightly less tucked than the right. So if we see from the back of the flat graduation in here, it's just given us that slight natural bevel, the natural blow-dried tuck on the hair, if you will. But if we see this side and here, we've got a much higher, much more sort of, I don't know, Shoreditch-y kind of graduation. Okay, so ignore the line, I haven't blow dried it. I'm not going to blow dry it because Jen's going to be here doing her theory. But you can see the difference in height and the difference of control for the graduation. So it still tucks in nicely in the base, but the graduation is an awful lot higher in the back on this side than it is in the back on this side. So here's my triangular graduation and here's my flat graduation. So you can see the difference. So the length in this side sits a lot longer and just gives you that tuck, but the length in here is a much more sort of head hugging and creative feel. So if somebody's got quite thick hair and they don't want too much of a graduation, I go for this side here personally. But if somebody is a little bit, their hair's a little bit finer and you want to build a little bit more stability in the look, go for something on this side. Okay, does that make sense? Is there any questions for that techniques, or any questions that somebody doesn't understand, or anything that people want to touch over before we go? Or is that okay? Do people find that's a little bit starting to make sense? To be honest, it's difficult cutting hair. It's not easy, but when you focus on it and when you do it yourselves is when you're really gonna find that it makes sense. What I advise to do is watch this back, watch Darren's one back from yesterday, see if you can see an area that you do understand and go and have a go at it. And then when you start to work your fingers, and it's all working out how to hold the hair and where to lift the hair. But primarily it's just focusing on this, it's your elevation chart. So the higher you lift it, the less weight you're going to have in there. So if we think back to that, the higher we lift it, the less weight. This side's quite long, isn't it? And quite heavy. We didn't lift that very high. We only lifted it into this sort of dimensions here. But this side, we lifted it a lot higher. So that's what's created that little bit more of a softer, more dressier look because we've lifted it higher. So thinking of our fundamentals, we go for our lower shapes, our higher looks, and they're just going to get lighter as you lift the hair higher. So basically that's what we've been running through, but the techniques change all the time. So the techniques, somebody will cut slightly differently. It doesn't matter how you achieve it, as long as you achieve something beautiful and something nice and something that suits the person's face. Okay. Any questions or anything? Or are we good to go? Jen is online. Can you take a picture of your board? I will. I'll take a picture of the board. I will send this in and we will explain it a lot more. So yes, I will do. And we're going to go over to Jen for some theory.
Hi.
Hello. All right, oh, you are here. How are you? Oh yeah, I saw your message. Sorry. How are you? All right.
Yeah, good. That was fabulous. Thank you.
Wonderful. Excellent. So I'm going to make Jen the host, and I'm going to leave. I need to get my laptop charged for later because of this thing I've got to do at 2. So I'm going to make Jen the host, if I can find her on the top. Thank you all for joining me this morning. Hopefully it's been quite a good session. Hopefully you guys,
Really good.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a bit difficult, a bit confusing, but I think we sort of got
It's one of those though, like you said, Robert, it's doing it, isn't it? It's getting in there and doing it. And it's until you had a go, it's difficult to keep talking about.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I find that I couldn't learn like this. I found it difficult when somebody was showing me a cut online, but luckily we record the sessions and we make sure that everybody understands that is recorded, so you can go back and watch it and do it yourselves while the recording's on. I find that so much easier. So Jen is now the host. I'm going to stop recording because I think if I leave, it will turn off the recording. So when I leave, pop yourself on record. All right. Thank you guys. And I'll see you all at 2 o'clock for some layering. Okay. Bye-bye.